morning, everyone. We are continuing our Shame of Emperors series. Today's message is going to be called the Kerala Death Rattle. As many of you know, I take my identity as a Kerala American pretty seriously. I think that a lot of times we are encouraged to denounce the things that make us great and the things that make us unique. And so my first instinct is to protect those things. And so as I go through challenging personal circumstances, when God asks me to sit down and be humble, I like to think about, well, what can I do productively that would have lasting impact, even though I don't have a lot of personal flexibility. So one of the things that's always been important to me was navigating how our first generation and second generation communities interact, especially in leadership. The reason that I feel it's important for us is that we can serve as a template for other minority communities to understand how faith and culture and intellectualism and family and social spheres kind of intersect. And so we won't get everything perfect, nor will we have all the nuance of every other community. We're actually, similar to the Amish or Quaker communities in a lot of respects, but we can certainly be forthcoming about our experience, which includes our strengths and weaknesses, and that can help explain why we carry ourselves in the way that we do in foreign lands. Okay, so a lot of you, going back to my time in Dallas and even prior to that in Chicago, may have noticed that I have not, I've always carried myself as a, suburban individual, upper middle class individual, but I have not always had the freedom to invest in the things that are important to me to the level that I want to. Any investment I've been able to obtain has been through my own personal business efforts and job efforts, and that healthy independence is very good, okay? One of the things that the Kerala Christian community does very well is pick and choose which parts of American culture it wants to make practice, okay? So let me start by going through the priorities of our culture. Priority number one is status within the community. So because we are a fully functional society in Kerala, when people come over here, they're only coming over here to make an income for a better quality of life. The actual community structure is already established from over there. They take that, same as the Mexicans do when they come to California or Chicago or Texas, or the Cubans do in Florida, or the let me not speak on New York with regards to Jamaica and Puerto Rico. I'm not sure, but from what I've observed, Mexicans and Cubans have similar ways of emigrating to the United States and retaining a certain sense of the community. So, because we don't necessarily need to assimilate socially, our first generation is very comfortable finding their group of peers and establishing a satellite community here when, the vast majority of their relatives and extended family are over there. And if they can, they bring them over here through visas or whatever. So status is defined dependent on your faith background. Everyone in India has some kind of faith background, whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, or Jain, or Christian, or Catholic, or there's even a Jewish contingent somewhere. That's not something we have anything to do with, but that's what they do. So what does status mean? Well, then we get to pretty normal definitions. So money, your woman, your children, and your career. Now, with regards to the women, because India is more of a conservative society, the status of the woman is really the status of the woman's family. So if you have married into a solid family and, two families have kind of merged together, that's a sign of, increased status. And of course, even though you're Christian, we're affected heavily by the caste system. So things like skin tone and hair texture and anti-blackness are very important to the Syrian Christian community. Now remember, Kerala is where Vasco da Gama went when he first came to India. It's the tip of that bottom portion of the diamond of India. So that's where a lot of coastal trade happened. India and Ethiopia are separated by the Arabian Sea. Okay, so you may even see some kind of genetic phenotype similarities between Ethiopians and Eritreans and South Indians, okay, Tamils and Keralites and so on and so forth. And Keralites will be similar to the Dominican Republic with regards to Haiti. For those of you that know how Dominicans treat Haitians, Keralites will be the Dominicans, and the Tamils and Sri Lankans, Andaman Islands, those types of people will be more of the Haitians. So you can start to see how, once I recognized that, I was like, okay, we need to make sure that we're not furthering any unnecessary damage. Okay, so part of Texas Movement's mission is to make sure Alexander Mathai is removed from those dogmas. Okay. Kids and career. Your career is important because it's tied to your money, but the status of your career, now this is where we're similar to the African and Nigerian communities, because, things that are very well understood as solid careers, your physicians, your lawyers, your engineers, not a lot of lawyers really, but engineers and physicians, certainly pharmacy, things that have well-established educational to a career advancement track. That's what a lot of people start with. And then if the children can prove that, an alternative career is equal to or better in terms of those metrics, then they will be encouraged to pursue those careers. Now, my stupid behind chose not only non-conducive careers, but pro-black careers. So it only exacerbated my financial strangulation. Now, what are the values of the second generation? Well, because a lot of us came over here and were instantly dropped into the middle class or upper middle class demographic, a lot of times we don't have the same fighting spirit that first generation people do, or people that come from lower socioeconomic demographics do. So even though we physically have similarities to the African American and Hispanic communities, and we may be able to blend in if we were in set environments in some degree or another, we have a kind of a something for nothing mentality, which is why you see the cheapness of our parents reflected in us by trying to grab as much as we can out of a system without really contributing anything to it in return. That's an example of it's a, let's say, call it a zero-sum game. If I win, you have to lose type of thing. So sometimes I feel, this is just a hypothesis, but when our parents come here and have the naturally good self-esteem plus the natural human ego, they come over here and they're treated like kind of second-class citizens when they themselves want to operate by a caste system and treat other people like second-class citizens. So when they come over here and they go into white America and they see, oh, this Gandhi thing is real, and the second-class deal is kind of a real thing. That resentment builds in the parents, and they go to where they have control, which is the home and the children. So the systems that they have control over, which is their local faith-based community and their local gossip network, as well as the hierarchical family structure, that's used as a sales funnel for the abuse. And that abuse flows to the next generation. And the only way out of that abuse pattern is through marriage, because marriage is where, the husband and wife are allowed to break off until the in-laws come and live with them. And most young married couples deal with elder figures that continue to use parental abuse and manipulation tactics even in the married life. Even though Genesis says a man shall leave his father and mother and be with his wife, they skirt around that like they skirt around every other commandment or decree or whatever have you. Okay? As I said before, the South African mentality is kind of a good template for this. We, in our community, our first generation craves proximity to whiteness and anti-proximity to blackness. And so we hit a certain glass ceiling with the proximity to whiteness in school, in achievement, in economics, in neighborhoods, and in the workplace. And so we start to get creative. Well, what can I do because if everybody in my community is hitting this same glass ceiling, how can I say that I'm better than my neighbor? So I need to do something. What can I do? Oh, and we go back to middle school. You bully the weakest person in the circle standing out of school. So they do more and more anti-black type of things. So any way they can do, and this is where the intellectualism of stupidity comes in. Anything they can do to proactively be anti-black in their thinking, even though many of their relatives will be just as dark-skinned as African diaspora individuals. They think that the public shaming and the public beating or dismissing of that portion of the diaspora will gain them additional credibility and high trust credibility within the mainstream community. Okay? So you will notice that a lot of the vindictive model minority behavior in Asians and Indians comes from that mentality, and often it is passed down from generation to generation subconsciously. Okay? Just like people say basketball players go broke after receiving NBA contracts because financial literacy is passed down genetically, well, so is racism, ideology, and prejudiced thinking. Okay? Regardless of how well you know the Bible or how many seminaries you've been to that have good quality Jewish funding. Okay? And eventually, when you live in a suburban life, you develop a false sense of security in your intellectual virtue. Okay? So if you're able to quote the verse references, like I said, and if you're able to have a portion of time in the speaking rotation at your local church, which you'll notice that a lot of first-generation pastors love to do, even if they're a guest at a different church, they will want 10 to 15 minutes of speaking time, because that's like the accolades on a college application. So it's their way of just staying culturally relevant as they age and taking on that elder status and that persona, because they are upset with their parents because they could never really confront their parents about the unspeakable evils that were done to them via passive-aggressive behavior. Okay? And then, of course, if there's any kind of financial, resources there, that is held on with a tight grip because that is their strength. Okay? Children, this is why learning how to communicate your feelings through your words, through writing, and also, if necessary, through your fists. Okay? So rather than going straight to violence, every boxer will tell you that it's the training that does damage to you over time. It's better to do something competitive that gets out that frustration, that builds the testosterone in you, that keeps the hormone balance good, male and female. You don't need to take any drugs to do this. The body has enough biochemical responses to give you a good reward system for doing quality work. Okay, I'm 38 years old. I feel just as good besides this situation as I've ever felt in my life. You can see that I don't really have a receding hairline, and as soon as this stress goes, you'll see an improved quality of health. And so the golden Frieza form is coming. Don't worry about it, okay? The last thing I want to address with regards to these things is the stages of death, or the stages of grief. Now, as I told you, July 19th of 2023, my mother passed away very suddenly due to a heart attack. I am very concerned about the cover-up that's happening with regards to the circumstances surrounding her passing. But I know that there are plenty of people in my diaspora that have access to the true information, so I know that it will come out in time. Okay? The paper trail is already there, and everything is, you can't run from the truth anymore. Okay? So, what are the stages of death? Denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and then acceptance. Okay? So as we age, so let's use myself. So Drake just dropped 3 albums that nobody really listened to. He is now at the Raven Simone stage of his career. Okay? So he has been in denial for a long time. He thinks that he is not an upper 30s individual talking to very young women. Okay? Trying to be the same 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old R&B crooner that he was when I was in college. Okay? My friend group recognized it very early. We knew that he had 2 tracks that he could go. When he dropped So Far Gone, he could go the R&B singer route, or he could go the rap route. And because of his ancestry, he chose to go the R&B singer route, and you've seen what has happened to the culture since 2009. Okay? So when the Keralites go into their upper stages, they start to realize that all the preaching that they've done is starting to accrue. Okay? So the accountability date is coming. And especially when a spouse dies, you have to sit and realize the mortality, all our mortality clocks start to become real. Now, I always had an awareness of my mortality clock, so I wanted to make sure that anything I did would be justifiable on the day of judgment. And, even when my mother was leaving me, I was very sad. I was very upset because, she wouldn't get to see the next chapter of our life together. I knew that we didn't waste any moment that we had together. I was speaking to her whenever possible on FaceTime, probably interrupting her work a lot of times, but I noticed that I never saw frustration on her face, and I always tried to remain as truthful with her as possible. So we had as good of a mother-son relationship as we could have, as the Lord allows. And if I could gift that connection to all of you, I certainly would. And I've been trying to do that by being open in the way that she would be open. So even though I am representing an alpha male type of brand, I want that alpha mentality to go to your emotional intelligence as well, because I know that my mother would want you to have that skill. Okay, regardless of your race or gender or preference or things like that. Now, some of your preferences, you need to talk to God about those things, but it's not my place to judge that. So that's between you and God. Okay, anger. When you have the denial of the next generation taking over, that's when you're like, no, I'm still in charge. I'm still the man. Then we go to anger, and then how do we express our anger? Like I said, we have proximity to whiteness and anti-proximity to blackness. So we have proximity to us, anti-proximity to our children. And so we start creating stories. And if you're a good storyteller, you'll create very intricate stories. Okay? I'm trying to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes, okay? The anger is going to be represented by a general jealousy and envy. You're jealous of the life that you gave your children. Even in Succession, Kendall said to Logan Roy. All these names are very, very interesting, by the way. You're jealous of the life you gave your children. And sometimes that happens. It's very frustrating. Bargaining. Here is where every culture is different, okay? And we may go into this later. We may actually make this a unit. Who knows? Bargaining is about how can I keep my status, because remember we said status is the most important thing, and how can I remove their status, okay? Because when an Indian gets down to his core, he's controlled by what he truly believes. And unfortunately, in our community, our diaspora, we're controlled by our caste system based off of the Hindu community, because the Hindus are the majority in the country of India. I believe there's a party called the BJP that has been oppressing Christians for many, many years. My mom was very adamant about being against those things. My responsibility is to America. So my concern is about the Kerala American Diaspora, but certainly the people being oppressed by foreign terrorists like that are in my heart as well. We're praying for you all the time. Okay? So in the Bible, there's King Hezekiah. King Hezekiah is almost as lauded as King David, as in terms of his goodness during his reign. But one of the things he did was he invited the people of Babylon in to see all of his treasures in his house, in his castle. Now, that sounds to me, it could be, look, I haven't been to that level of wealth, but it could just be basic hubris. Okay? Look at me, look at me, look at me. Sometimes we get that way when we live in our oppressors' neighborhoods. We want to seek their approval, because just because we can sit in the library of Calvin Candy, that does not make us the plantation owner. Okay, no matter how good of a limp we put on, doesn't make us the same. Okay, so social sacrifices. There will always be a slave that is willing to give up Nat Turner. And remember, Nat Turner was publicly hung and lynched and all that type of stuff, and then eaten, cut up and eaten. And then who knows what kind of postage stamps he was put on after that. Okay? And one thing about second generation Keralites is they love a good lynching. They love a good public lynching because, and this is where we all need to come to Jesus, they have been in an abusive home. Okay, so remember people talk about Joe Jackson and the Jackson 5? If one kid is getting beat, if Michael is getting beat by Joe, Jermaine breathes a sigh of relief. Tito breathes a sigh of relief. All the other guys breathe a sigh of relief because at least Joe is not beating me right now. So as long as one of us is taking the beating, the rest of us are safe. Okay? But I need to tell you boys that as long as you have that mentality, it robs you from your courage account. So when this is all over, everyone's going to remember how silent you were. And when you come to the door of the club, people are going to look at you the same way. Whether that's security or the waitresses or the bottle girls, you will have to deal with that. So I hope you have the liquidity to assist you with that. Sadness and acceptance. This is where the depression of reality and truth kicks in, usually when you're by yourself, and that the weight of that accountability starts to sit on you. And this is where people like to do a sleight of hand. They like to do public donations to 501c3 charities just before they die. And say, well, I'm going to give my children the opportunity to earn everything like I earned. I earned everything. Neglecting to say that you gave part of your soul away when you decided to be half a human being. Not at the beginning, but as time went on, you continued that facade and that charade for the Master's approval. That accountability is between you and God. And we can't demand Zacchaeus pay back what he robbed from people. If he has a moment with Jesus, then he will have a natural inclination to pay back what he owes in spades with interest and 4 times when he's stolen. And finally, acceptance. We all must accept our mortality. I must accept that I'm approaching 40. I must accept that I'm not of college age anymore. I can't run around with young women or have the excuse of being a child when I drink too much, or be experimental with all kinds of hard drugs and things like that. Track and field saved me from needing to experiment with those things. I'm not judging anybody for how they choose to use their time. But remember, the body is something that you're given only once. It's a gift you have. And so it was very important to me because a lot of times the Indian community is asked to destroy their body and take on an involuntary celibacy just to make ends meet here, to be a non-sexual threat. But that's not how God created us. God created us not to be deviants, but to be autonomous, full humans. And I want our American identity to be the same here because I believe our Creator endowed us with all those rights. The same rights that everyone else has, we have as well. That doesn't mean you go sowing your royal oats everywhere. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have a right to your full identity. And I want to make sure that that identity is protected in you. Okay? So as we go through our own death rattles, okay, whether you're Keralite or otherwise, be mindful of the generational habits that have come down in your family and in your community and your social group. And learn from the cultural groups around you. What strengths do they have that your community doesn't? What weaknesses do they have that your community does? How can you have an exchange of value there? And how can we help each other succeed as we go into this next phase of America? Okay? This is Alexander Varghese Mathai of Texas Movement International signing off. Thank you for your time. This has been the Kerala Death Rattle in the Shame of Emperors series. We'll see you next time.